Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. It's so good to have so many of you joining us today, and we look forward to a fruitful discussion time. My name is Kolade. I'm the Program and Grants Funding Manager for the ANH Academy. And together with Thalia, Joe, and Suneetha, we'll be speaking to you today about the ANH Academy Competitive Research Grants. Okay, so we'll get started and I'll hand over to my colleague, Joe, to introduce us to the ANH Academy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's information webinar. Thanks so much for joining us and for your interest in the ANH Academy Grants Programme. I'm just going to say a couple of really quick words about the Academy in case anyone doesn't know the background, to give some context about where this is coming from before I hand over to Thalia and Ore to take forward the specifics about the funding call. So for those of you who may not know, the ANH Academy, the Agriculture, Nutrition and Health Academy, is a global evidence platform designed to accelerate actions towards equitable and just food systems for nutrition and health, all the while confronting climate change, protecting nature. And the aim is to do this through interdisciplinary research, capability sharing, and collaboration. We've now been running since 2015, and we have over 10,000 members in 160 countries around the world who come from all sorts of different disciplines and sectors, seniorities, geographies. So we really are a really big tent, a diverse tent of people. The goals of the Academy sit broadly under three main domains. Firstly, very much where this grants program is sitting is research and evidence landscape. So the aim of the Academy in this respect is to strengthen the evidence base on what works, actionable evidence and what works. Secondly, but very much intertwined with this grants program as well, is knowledge translation and policy uptake. So the aim of the Academy here is to facilitate the uptake of evidence into policies and programs at national, regional, and global levels. And finally, really speaking to the ecosystem of how this type of research and policy engagement happens, the final group of goals of the Academy is around global science capability and collaboration, where we aim to strengthen this science capability and collaboration through catalyzing learning and sharing. And many of you may be familiar with what the Academy does in this respect with our support system for agriculture, nutrition, researchers and practitioners, as well as our learning labs and fellowships and many other areas. So we're really looking forward to talking with you today about this grants program, and I will hand over to back to Thalia and Ore to take this forward. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much for joining us I can see from all over the world. It's really quite nice to see so much interest in this program and this opportunity. So welcome to all, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you may be. And I'm just going to go through a little bit. First, I'll talk about the premise of these grants, and then a bit about the eligibility criteria before I hand over to Ore. So as you all may be familiar with, just to mention that these grants have come they've come as part of an evolution. First, we had round 1 and 2 under IMMANA, the Innovative Metrics and Methods for Agriculture Nutrition Actions. That was in our first phase of the program from 2015 to 2019, and we awarded 15 grants under that phase. And then there was the second phase of IMMANA from 2019 to 2025, and we awarded 13 grants in rounds 3 and 4. And now we're looking to another 5-year period of the ANH Academy growing and shifting slightly. And we are going to, in this first phase, we're going to award up to 3 grants. And these are slightly larger than the previous grants to develop methods and metrics. And these will also have not only a bigger budget, but a slightly different focus. And that focus will be much more around testing and evaluating intervention strategies and policies around food systems. Next slide. Thanks, Joe. So we these new grants are going to be, they're situated under the ANH Academy goal, which is to accelerate actions towards equitable and just food systems for nutrition and health, whilst confronting climate change and protecting nature through interdisciplinary research, capability sharing, and collaboration. And like I said, under IMMANA, the first 2 phases of IMMANA, we had a strong focus on methods and metrics that would help elucidate connections between food systems, including agriculture, and those pathways tracing all the way up into nutrition and health, nutrition-related health outcomes. And the focus is going to now shift to this evaluation of intervention strategies and policies. So very action-oriented, and this will, the testing and evaluating of these actions we aim to increase the ultimate aim is to increase the equitable consumption of safe, affordable, and nutritious foods. Next slide. So we have, the way that we've organized this is that we have 2 sort of priority research themes, and then 2 cross-cutting themes. And the priority research themes are to reduce food loss and waste in production and supply and the value chain within markets and food environments. As we'll go into a little bit more later, the focus is on lower and middle income contexts. And so this food loss and waste is really focused around supply chains, agricultural environments, supply chains all the way up to markets, but would not necessarily be sort of waste at the household level in a high income context. And then the second theme that we have is creating demand for nutritious diets. And this will focus on how food systems platforms can enable healthy food choices. So not excluding, but going beyond sort of the individual level behavior change communication to these system-wide actions that may be able to transform the demand for nutritious diets. Then we have 2 cross-cutting themes. Those, because it's so very important, one of the major challenges of our time will be climate change in the environment, as well as inequity, which especially including these gender dimensions of inequities. And so these themes will work hopefully together in our larger mission and portfolio, as well as in your proposals for funding. Next slide. So we are, as Joe mentioned, we are a big tent ethos, and we also embrace many different ways and methods to answer the most pressing questions that will inform action in this space. So we, of course, within the time and budgetary guidelines, we will accept any type of research, any methodological approach to research, especially including, of course, the most sort of straightforward randomized control trials, but also quasi-experimental studies, feasibility studies that inform the design, feasibility, and acceptability of different interventions or actions, policies, economic evaluations. We definitely are interested in value for money, cost effectiveness, and scale. So anything that shows what will be good value for money in this space, as well as implementation science methods that look at contextual factors of why and how interventions work and for whom, under what circumstances, as well as the conditions, resources, and processes for scale. And lastly, any other methodologies that enable the study of co-benefits and trade-offs of actions whether they be policies, programs, interventions, etc. So these are, and this is not necessarily an exhaustive list. We think that this is where most of the research might fall, but this is just to give you an idea of the breadth of methodologies that would be appropriate for proposals. Next slide. So we're going to go through the eligibility and review criteria now, and we'll be happy to answer more questions about what I've just introduced at the end. This, as you know, we've published these as well in the RFP, but we can certainly answer questions related to these as well at the end. Next slide. So there's going to be an initial eligibility process where we have sort of a checklist of grants that are minimally eligible, and this includes the demonstration of multidisciplinary expertise across relevant sectors. So if you know anything about the ANH Academy, you know that we really love to see different sectors and disciplinary people from different disciplines working together and really bringing together that varied expertise and perspective in new ways. We expect that competitive proposals would be either led by or in partnership with LMIC researchers and institutions, and that the capability sharing approach would be really well articulated for that. Proposals need to be within the scope of 2 priority themes, so it has to include one or both of the 2 themes, food loss and waste, and demand creation for healthy diets. And it also must include at least one of these cross-cutting themes of equity, especially gender and climate change and environment. And these can, when we say include, this can be sort of either a climate or equity sensitive approach that underlies the proposals, or it could be a much more direct thematic focus. We would also expect to see that there's demonstrated relevance of the proposal to policy, and also a plan that includes how the evidence created would be utilized in policy processes. And of course, also sticking to our submission guidelines is important when everyone's down to the wire, and make sure you do stick to the articulated guidelines for submission. Next slide. So that's the first phase of check that we'll do for all proposals. That is very much a sort of yes/no exercise, whereas then proposals will go on to be scored under several more in-depth evaluation criteria. And the first of that is scientific excellence, and that has several different facets, which include a demonstrated ability to conduct research to international standards, including guidelines and sort of state-of-the-art approaches. Then there's will be a part of that criteria that's about the rigor and appropriateness of everything from the rationale all the way to the implementation and analysis plans. And so really thinking through both the how fit for purpose the proposal is along the methodological and inferential pieces of the proposal. Next slide. Then we will evaluate how much a proposal can demonstrate expertise in the thematic areas of proposed research. So this should be based on previous literature and frameworks, and as well a demonstrated familiarity not just with those frameworks, but a ability to really work with in context and with the state-of-the-art literature and frameworks. Research must address one or both of these focus themes, and they must include one or both of the cross-cutting themes, as I mentioned before. Next slide. Then we will be looking for the relevance and potential for policy uptake and impact. So we really want to, with these grants, really focused on not just evidence that's needed in the world, but evidence that's sort of needed now for processes that will affect change on the ground. And we would like to see in proposals that there is an actual documented known demand for the evidence and the evidence outputs that are proposed. And this includes the whole sort of research process as well, not just the outputs, but undertaking this evidence generation can be itself an engaging way to build better evidence into policies, programs, interventions, and strategies that create change. We also expect that this to be rather feasible, so that there's a way that we think there's a good plan to integrate the research process and the findings into policies and programs, which will help make them more evidence-based. Next slide. So the pathways to impact will be the next evaluation criteria that we include, and this is not just it mirrors the policy uptake and potential, but also unto itself, we would really like proposals to demonstrate how the research will be disseminated and applied, especially highlighting the relevance and adaptability across different regional and national contexts. So this relates to issues such as scale, or how these will be the findings of the evidence generated will be generalizable and applicable across multiple contexts. Next slide. Okay, and lastly, we have a cross-cutting theme around equity, but we also would like to see that this isn't just a focus theme, but really built into the mechanistic and collaborative aspects of the proposal itself. So we are quite dedicated to authentic, meaningful, and collaborative relationships that are not just about institutional relationships, but also about the partners and individuals involved in the proposal, and that and equity can mean, I just will remind everyone, quite a few different things, not just sort of either gender or nationality balance, but also differing levels of growth and expertise or types of experience. So involving experts with lived experience as well as scientific expertise would be very welcome, and that the partnership itself is not just sort of on paper, but really sort of that these equitable principles are embedded into the proposal design. And this is one sort of very basic criteria, but we expect that applications would be either led by or in partnership with the low and middle income country institutions and involve these collaborations. And lastly, we expect that the budget and governance of the project should be equitably distributed, and that the budget itself reflects these factors as well. So I will hand over to Ore to take us through the last few criteria and budget questions.
Thank you, Thalia. So our final evaluation criteria, we'll be looking at value for money. We expect that you provide within the concept notes a brief description of how your proposal demonstrates value for money. And just to emphasize that that's not just about going for the cheapest price, but as FCDO explains, value for money is using making the best possible use of resources to maximize impact on improving people's lives. So within that section in the concept note, if you could just provide, a succinct explanation of how you will demonstrate value for money. For those who make it to the full proposal stage, we'll be expecting that you provide a full budget justification of all your budget line items. Next slide, please. Okay, so all information is there. Each grant is up to £750. We don't expect that all grants will be £750. We know £1,000. We know that there are some that are slightly less than that, but that is the maximum ceiling we're able to award for this round of grants. All budgets must be in pound sterling, and the maximum duration is 36 months or 3 years. And like I mentioned, we'll scrutinize all applications for value for money. And within the RFP, we've listed all the possible costs that you can include. But these are just some highlights in terms of the expectations in terms of direct costs. And all indirect costs are limited to 15% of the total grant budget. Next slide, please. For the review process, we've split it into two. So we'll have initially, like Thalia mentioned, we'll initially do an eligibility screening. So we'll use eligibility criteria to screen out all those applications who don't meet those sort of key criteria. And then we'll do a short listing of the concept notes that do fulfill all those eligibility criteria. And that will be done by the ANH Academy team with oversight by the co-chairs of the IPE. And like we've said, shortlisted candidates will be invited to submit their full proposals. And those will be evaluated by at least two peer reviewers and the independent panel of experts. And that will be followed by a panel review meeting where they will discuss each proposal in detail. And the final approval will be made by the ANH Academy Steering Committee, which is made up of some key funders, including FCDO and BMGF. Next slide, please. Okay, so one additional key consideration is that currency fluctuations are very real. We've had situations in the past where people have budgeted and at the end of the day, there were currency fluctuations and they had a shortfall. So please be very aware of this and use conservative exchange rates when providing your budgets. Next slide, please. Just a quick recap of the milestones. The submission deadline is the 24th of October, 2024. We will not extend this deadline, so please do your best to meet this. And then we'll complete our review process and invite successful concept memos to submit their full proposals by the 21st of November, 2024. And the deadline for that will be the 30th of January next year, 2025. And we hope to notify everyone that's been successful by the 31st of March, 2025, and that grants will start by May 2025. But please note that these timelines are all subject to change. Next slide, please. So we know that you'll have lots of questions, and thank you for the questions that have come in so far. Some have come into our inbox already. If you have any questions after this, please email us. We've also put on a list of frequently asked questions on our website as well, which we hope to update every Friday, every week. We'll collect all the questions from this session as well and add it on there. And any that come into our inbox, we'll add it on there as well so that everyone can be a beneficiary can benefit from the questions that are being asked through our inbox. But please, no question is too small or too big. Please feel free to ask us questions using ANH Academy at lshcm.ac.uk. And yes, the recording will be made available for those of you who want to listen again, or for those of you who haven't been able to join us live today. Next slide, please. Okay, so finally, I want to invite you all, if you aren't already a member of the ANH Academy, please join our vibrant global community. We recently clocked over 10,000 members. So please join us if you haven't yet, if you sign up at www.anhacademy.org.